What's up, my brother? So I got this request from a woman that's asking, why are some men so bothered that a female partner was promiscuous prior to being with them? I'll read the body of the email. This is something that men are disgusted with. Women that subscribe to the what's good for the goose is good for the gander narrative will never understand this. But in this video, I'm going to answer the question and answer why. So in the body of the message, it says, I'm a 31-year-old female. In my early to late 20s, I had a lot of sex, probably upwards of 100 plus partners. I explored my sexuality, loved the thrill of meeting someone new, and truthfully wasn't finding anyone I was truly interested in dating. But the sexual chemistry was there and I was horny. I get tested regularly. I have been very fortunate to only have gotten chlamydia once. Wow, what a catch. Only once. And a bad recurring yeast infection from one particular partner. I don't think this makes me a bad person. In fact, I prefer my partner to also have a high sex count so I know that he's as experienced as I am. At this point in my life, I'm looking for a serious partner. She's 31. Shocking, right? It's always around the age of 30 they want to get right with God and find somebody to settle down with and have a family. And they want the dudes to overlook her past. Anyway, so she's at this point looking for a serious partner, and I get nervous about judgment from my past. Well, you should. I'll talk about why in a moment. But truthfully, I don't feel ashamed. If anything, I am sort of proud. Imagine being proud of running through 100 guys plus. I feel like I did everything I wanted to do, and I had a lot of fun. Yeah, well, it's going to come at the expense. She's going to learn very quickly as she gets older. Some parts were not always fun, giving natural feelings and emotion and jealousy. From 15 to 19, I was in a serious relationship, and he was super controlling. Whoa! So that means she lost her virginity very young. I guess I never wanted that to define me ever again. Every time I had sex, no one forced me to. I wanted to. I get so 100 times. Anyway, 100 plus different guys. I guess I never really adhered to the double standard. If men can be horny, why can't women? Well, as I wash my hands of that disgusting nonsense, I will explain this one. So in my book, The Unplugged Alpha, I talk about a dynamic that has been well researched between the sexes, and it's been focused on specifically with women most of the time for this reason. So researchers have discovered that promiscuity negatively affects women in a terrible way. Here's the deal. The more sexual partners women have, and the younger they are when they lose their virginity, the worse off they are as a wife and a mother. They're terrible choices for marriages, unfortunately. A woman that was a virgin till the age of 20 and had one partner, for example, and you wife her up in her mid to late 20s is a better choice than a woman that's had 100 partners and lost her virginity at 14 or 15 or whatever age this one was when she started fooling around with guys and racking up a notch count. That's just the reality of life. It doesn't affect men the same way that it does women. I know that a lot of society today is like force-fed and crammed this narrative down their throat about what men and women are equal and what men can do, women can do, and what women can do, men can do. But there's significant differences between the sexes. There's not a lot of women, even though she says that she would prefer a guy with a lot of experience and doesn't have much in the way of a distaste to it. There's not a lot of women that would turn away from a guy that's been with a bunch of women. They just don't seem to care. The differences between men and women is that women seem very interested in a man's future. So a guy's future ability to provide, protect, be a father, be a husband, be competent, like all those boxes that they want you to tick off that I've talked about so many times. I covered in my book, of course, in a lot of detail. But men, in actuality, are very interested in a woman's past. They don't really care about her degree framed in mahogany on the wall and her travels around the world. In fact, it's basically detrimental. Just the reality of it. When guys start hearing things like, oh, I spent my 20s, traveling around the world and backpacking and working on cruise ships and, like all this sort of stuff, they start doing calculations and computations in their head going, okay, so if she was single for like 12 years and running around the world, how many dudes has she been with, right? Like, these are the thoughts going through their head. When she talks about losing her virginity at the age of 13 or something, insane like that, they're thinking to themselves, wow, I was like 20 when it happened for me. Why did she do that? And how many dudes was she with? And what other consequences are coming out of that? That's what they're thinking. And that's why men are disgusted and have a distaste with a woman's past. But women will never, understand that dichotomy, just because they don't seem to care after they've been force-fed a strong and steady diet of you go girl, and women can do what men can do, and more. And it's just where we're at today. What's going to change this? Well, I get asked that a lot, and to be honest with you, generally speaking, it's going to be a change of morals and values, a two-parent household. A lot of the most promiscuous, women today come from single-parent households. There's far more instances of teenage pregnancies, losing virginity at a younger age, promiscuity at households where girls don't have both parents at the house, where it's only a single parent. And, women get something like 80% of custody orders. So for the most part, I guess that seems to be mostly, single moms today. So look, what are you going to do about this? Well, I mean, if you're a chick that's been promiscuous, I wouldn't go bragging about it or being proud about it like this one is. It seems like the ones that have their heads at least in a state of recognition, once they start to realize guys are disgusted by a promiscuous past, will tend to try to hide it, or at least disguise it in some way or regard. Guys will tend to exaggerate their notch counts, and I think women in general tend to sort of like have them. So if she says something like, oh, I've been with 20 guys or something like that, you can pretty much double that number. One of the other things that I've noticed as well, as a function of a lot of the conversations, I've had thousands of them now, with guys, with gals, with couples, women don't seem to count as accurately as men do. I mean, men overestimate. They'll just brag. It's like, oh, I've been with 100 girls or something like that. And it's really like not even close to that, half or even, a third of that. Whereas women, when they're counting in their head, they're generally counting, guys that they had a longer term encounter with. Maybe it was a boyfriend, maybe they dated for a few months, maybe, it was a friend with friends with benefits for several months or something like that. They don't usually count shorter instances, one night stands, what happened in Vegas that weekend stays in Vegas, the foam cannon party in Ibiza at 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that on the beach. They don't, compute those numbers. Threesomes, lesbian encounters, BJs in a bathroom, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a big distinction in the differences between the way men and women operate in that regard. And some would say it's unfortunate, some would say it's a reality. Look, all I do is point to the facts. Don't get mad at the messenger when I tell you how things really are and how guys think. And, the mistakes that men and women make. It's like, look, men are always held accountable for their choices, for their beliefs, for their behaviors. But a lot of the times today, women aren't held to those same standards. They want to be held to the same standards. It's like, well, if guys can be promiscuous, then why can't I too? And it's like when they realize that thinking doesn't work and it's detrimental and they're not getting the results, or guys won't commit to them over a long-term basis, then what ends up happening is they're like, oh shit, I screwed up. But then they don't have any accountability in that sense. And there's always guys out there that will overlook a woman's promiscuous past. Lots of guys, in fact. The problem I suspect that this one is having is the guys that she wants to pair bond with over a long-term basis don't want anything to do with her once they discover what she's been all about and where she's been. High value men, the successful guys that women generally pine for. He's tall, he's wealthy, he's captivating, he's influential, men want to be him, women want to be with him, sort of thing. Those guys that they want to be with are generally spoiled for choice. So that means basically most of the women, like 80% of the women, we know this from women's swiping habits on dating apps, in fact, 80% of the women swipe right on 20% of the guys. So if that's the case, if he's in the top 20% or even top 10 or 5% or even 1%, then he's one of these guys that's like, I'm good, I'll pass. Maybe I'll date you. Maybe we'll have some fun together because you're so experienced. She's proud of that. But he's generally not going to propose to her. And frustration from women like this generally occurs when she finds that the only guys that are willing to commit to her are the ones that she doesn't want anything to do with on a long-term basis because he ain't in the top tier. And You know, when you spend your 20s running around being with a whole bunch of guys that select you, that want to be with you and be intimate with you, and hook up and do all these things with you, I would imagine you probably run a little bit of a complex in the regard that you think that, well, it's easy to get a guy and it's easy to sleep with a guy. I mean, guys will sleep with just about anything, but that doesn't translate over when she's like, okay, I think I'm ready to be a wife now at 31 and have babies, but guys don't want to commit to me. And that's the reality of life. I mean, if women were to be dispensed any advice that would legitimately change their life over a long-term basis when it comes to interactions with men and their long-term future, as far as, you know, their ambitions to be a wife or a mother, you know, for example, they should understand a completely different narrative from men. Men need to understand they have to make something out of themselves, because men are success objects. They have to do something with their lives. They have to become influential. They have to learn how to make money. They have to learn how to gather resources. Women, on the other hand, need to preserve their value. Men create value. Women need to preserve their value. And a woman that's preserved her value hasn't run around with 100 plus guys. It's just the reality of the world. It's not misogyny. It's just a fact of how society responds. You know, you go back through a lot of cultures, and even today, you know, I've read a lot of research papers on this. A lot of it can be found in Evo Psych books, or even research papers that these Evo Psych authors put out there. A lot of cultures and societies today will turn on women that have been promiscuous. It's really only in modern, urban, coastal, western sort of cities where female promiscuity is like, oh, girl, you know, you can go do whatever you want. It was popularized, you know, shows that, you know, women watch back in the day. I don't know what they are today, but like a lot of the women back in the day would watch shows like Sex and the City, and it's like the entire series was about, you know, women in New York racking up a notch count, being boss girls, chasing excellence, and then having dinner and drinks over their war stories. And I don't think that that's pulled back at all today. It seems to have accelerated, if anything. And I'm seeing more and more and more of these emails, posts, DMs, Reddit postings, and, you know, things like that, where women are like, I'm in my 30s, I'm ready to settle down, where's Mr. Right? And Mr. Right ain't showing up for her. You tell me what you think, guys. Smash the thumbs up button, leave your comment below with your experience, and pin to the top comment. There's a bunch of useful links. Go check them out, to my book, to request a video, my podcast, all that stuff. See you guys in the next video. Peace out.